Welcome to the Claude Certified Associate Foundation's CCAO-F Question Bank Series. In this video, I've got 15 exam-style practice questions lined up for you, covering the kind of prompting, output evaluation, product and model selection, workflow integration, projects configuration, responsible use, and troubleshooting scenarios you'll see on the real CCAO-F exam. Each question comes with the correct answer and a full explanation, including why the wrong options are wrong. Here's how to get the most out of this. When a question appears, pause the video, pick your answer, then hit play to check yourself. Ready? Let's dive in. Question 16. A CRM administrator wants Claude to reformat a list of 200 leads with fields like name, company, and lead score, so the data can be re-imported into the CRM system. Which output format best fits this need? The correct answer is D. A structured format, such as a table or CSV-style output with consistent columns per lead. Data intended for re-import into a system like a CRM needs consistent structured formatting, rows and columns, making a table or CSV-style structured output the appropriate choice. Now, why the other options are wrong. A. A single sentence stating the total number of leads is incorrect. This discards all the per-lead detail needed for re-import, providing only an aggregate count. B. A poem summarizing the overall lead list is incorrect. A creative summary format does not preserve the structured, field-level data needed for a CRM import. C. A narrative paragraph describing each lead in flowing prose is incorrect. Prose is not machine importable or easily parsed into consistent fields, making it a poor fit for CRM re-import. Question 17. A brand manager generates two versions of a product launch tagline from Claude. Version A is punchy but slightly off-brand in tone, and version B matches brand voice closely but is a bit long. What is the best evaluation approach? The correct answer is C. Compare both versions against defined criteria, brand voice guidelines, target length, audience fit, and either select the stronger match or ask Claude to combine the punchiness of A with the brand accuracy of B. Comparing outputs against explicit criteria and iterating to combine the strengths of each is the sound evaluation approach, rather than picking one option on a single surface trait like length or punch. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Automatically choose version A because shorter, punchier copy is always superior for taglines is incorrect. Brand voice fit is a critical evaluation criterion. Length and punchiness alone do not determine which version best serves the brand's needs. B. Flip a coin, since both outputs came from the same model and are therefore equally valid, is incorrect. Outputs from the same model can differ meaningfully in quality and fit. A random choice ignores available criteria for evaluation. D. Reject both outputs and use only the marketing team's original slogan without further comparison is incorrect. Discarding both without comparing against criteria skips the evaluation step and may forego a genuinely useful option. Question 18. While researching industry benchmarks for an email campaign report, Claude includes a footnote. Source: Journal of Digital Marketing Analytics, Volume 14. The marketer has worked in this field for years and has never heard of this journal. What is the most appropriate action? The correct answer is D. Attempt to independently locate the named journal and specific volume. If it cannot be confirmed to exist, treat the citation as a likely fabrication and remove it or replace it with a verifiable source. Specific sounding but unfamiliar citations are a classic hallucination pattern in generated text. The correct validation step is to independently search for the source and remove or replace unverifiable citations rather than publish them. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Reword the footnote to remove the volume number only, keeping the journal name in the report. Is incorrect. Partially editing the citation does not resolve whether the source itself is real. The whole citation needs verification, not cosmetic adjustment. B. Assume the journal is simply obscure and include the citation as is in the final report. Is incorrect. Unfamiliarity alone isn't proof either way, but an unverifiable, oddly specific academic citation from a generative model is a common hallucination pattern and should not be included without confirmation. C. Ask Claude to generate 3 more citations in the same style to strengthen the report's credibility. Is incorrect. Generating additional unverified citations compounds the risk rather than resolving whether the original source is genuine. Question 19. Claude drafts a response to an RFP, request for proposal questionnaire, with 20 numbered questions from a prospective enterprise client. On review, the sales team notices questions 14 and 17 were skipped entirely in the output. What evaluation step does this illustrate the need for? The correct answer is C, a completeness check, verifying that every required question or section from the source request has a corresponding response before the document is submitted. Checking outputs for completeness against the original requirements, all 20 questions answered, is a key validation step, especially for formal documents like RFP responses, where omissions can disqualify a bid. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. A bias check, since skipped items usually indicate demographic bias in the model, is incorrect. Skipped questions in a long, structured response are typically an omission/completeness issue, not evidence of demographic bias. B. No evaluation is needed since RFP responses are informal documents that do not require full coverage. Is incorrect. RFP responses are formal, often legally binding documents for which completeness is typically required and evaluated by the prospective client. D. A tone check, since skipped questions are primarily a style issue, is incorrect. Missing content is a completeness problem, not a stylistic or tonal one. Question 20. A demand generation manager asks Claude to project the expected ROI of a new paid ad channel, and Claude responds with a confident, precise figure. You can expect a 412% ROI within 60 days. Despite the manager providing no historical performance data for that channel. What should the manager recognize about this output? The correct answer is A. The confident, specific claim is unsupported, given that no historical data was supplied, and should be treated as speculative. The manager should request Claude show its assumptions or avoid stating a precise ROI without real inputs. Overconfident, specific projections without underlying data are a red flag for evaluation. The manager should push Claude to expose its assumptions or reasoning, and should not treat an ungrounded figure as a reliable forecast. Now, why the other options are wrong? B. This output should be shared with finance as a validated projection since Claude specializes in financial modeling, is incorrect. Claude is not a certified financial modeling authority, and an ungrounded projection should never be passed to stakeholders as validated without supporting data and review. C. The precision of the number, 412%, not a round figure, confirms it was calculated from real data, is incorrect. Precision in a stated figure does not indicate it is grounded in actual data. A model can generate a specific-looking number without any real underlying calculation, especially with no input data provided. D. ROI projections are always accurate when produced by AI tools, regardless of input data availability, is incorrect. Output quality and accuracy depend heavily on the inputs and context provided. Without real data, any specific projection is speculative, not guaranteed accurate. Question 21. Over a long conversation, a marketing ops lead asks Claude to 1. Define the target audience for a campaign. 2. Write ad copy for that audience. And 3. Draft a landing page for the same audience. On review, the landing page describes a noticeably different audience, older, enterprise buyers, than the one defined in Step 1, younger, small business owners. What does this scenario best illustrate? The correct answer is B, the need to check for cross-output consistency in multi-turn work. Even when context is generally retained, later outputs should be validated against earlier defining details, like the audience definition, and discrepancies should be corrected explicitly. In extended, multi-step conversations, drift can occur between outputs. Evaluators should actively check that later deliverables remain consistent with earlier foundational decisions, like an audience definition, and correct any drift by referencing the original detail explicitly. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. The landing page is correct, and the audience definition from Step 1 should be silently updated to match it. Is incorrect. There's no basis to assume the later output is the correct one. The inconsistency itself needs investigation and reconciliation, not automatic deference to the most recent output. C. Claude cannot maintain any context across a multi-turn conversation, so all details must be repeated in every single message. Is incorrect. Claude generally does retain conversational context. The issue here is a specific drift inconsistency that needs to be checked, not a total absence of context retention. D. This type of drift only happens in single-turn prompts, never across multi-turn conversations. Is incorrect. This scenario is itself an example of drift occurring within a multi-turn conversation, contradicting the claim that it only happens in single-turn prompts. Question 22. A customer support rep at an e-commerce company needs to quickly draft a short, routine reply to a simple shipping status inquiry, one of dozens handled per hour. Which model tier best fits this task? The correct answer is D, a faster, lower-cost model like Haiku, since the task is simple, high volume, and time-sensitive, making speed and cost efficiency more valuable than maximum reasoning depth. Haiku is designed for fast, cost-efficient handling of simpler, high-volume tasks. A routine shipping status reply doesn't require deep reasoning, so aligning model choice with task simplicity and volume favors a faster, cheaper model. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Model choice makes no difference for this type of task, so any option is equally efficient is incorrect. Model tiers differ in speed and cost, which matters for high-volume, time-sensitive routine tasks, so the choice is not inconsequential. B. Opus, because every customer-facing message should use the most capable model available, is incorrect. Using the most capable and typically slowest/costliest model for a high-volume, low-complexity task is inefficient. Task requirements should drive model choice, not a blanket rule. C. Sonnet is the only model capable of drafting customer emails. Is incorrect. Multiple model tiers can draft customer emails. Sonnet is a balanced mid-tier option, not the exclusive one capable of this task. Question 23. A marketing team runs a quarterly rebrand campaign that requires consistent reference to brand guidelines, past approved messaging, and a style guide across dozens of separate conversations with different team members over several months. Which Claude feature is best suited to support this ongoing consistency? The correct answer is C, a Claude project configured with custom instructions and uploaded knowledge sources, brand guidelines, style guide, approved messaging, so every team member's conversation within it draws on the same consistent reference material. Projects are designed for exactly this use case. Persistent custom instructions plus uploaded knowledge sources let multiple team members and conversations consistently reference the same brand guidelines and style rules over time. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Switching to a lower-tier model for these conversations, since brand consistency is primarily a model selection issue, is incorrect. Model tier affects reasoning quality and speed, not persistent access to reference material. The consistency problem is best solved with configuration, project/knowledge, not model choice. B. A single, long chat conversation that every team member shares and adds messages to indefinitely is incorrect. A single, ever-growing shared chat is unwieldy for multiple users, is not designed for persistent shared reference material, and will eventually hit context constraints. D. Re-uploading the brand guidelines manually into every new individual chat conversation is incorrect. This is repetitive, error-prone, and does not scale well across many conversations and team members compared to a persistent project setup. Question 24. A marketing analyst has been working in a single, very long chat session for hours, pasting in multiple large CRM export files and iterating repeatedly. Responses start to feel slower and occasionally omit details discussed early in the session. What is the best explanation and recommended action? The correct answer is A. The conversation has likely grown large enough that earlier context is being deprioritized. The analyst should summarize key findings so far and start a new, more focused conversation, or a project, carrying forward only the essential context and files needed. Very long sessions can strain context limits, causing earlier details to be less reliably referenced. Best practice is to summarize progress and restart in a fresh, focused conversation, or persist key material in a project, rather than continuing to pile on in one indefinite thread. Now, why the other options are wrong? B. Switch to a smaller, cheaper model, since context issues are caused by using too capable a model, is incorrect. Context length limitations are not resolved by switching model tiers. They are addressed through conversation management, summarizing, restarting, or persisting context. C. Nothing can be done. Long conversations always become unusable and must be abandoned with all progress lost, is incorrect. Progress does not need to be lost. Summarizing key findings preserves the value before starting fresh, which is a standard mitigation, not an unavoidable dead end. D. The account has run out of monthly usage and must be upgraded immediately, is incorrect. The symptoms described, degraded recall of early details in a very long session, point to context length effects, not a usage limit or billing issue. Question 25. A field marketer wants Claude to produce a polished, one-page product one-pager with headline, bullet features, and a call to action that she'll want to view formatted, edit a couple of times, and then export as a standalone document. Which Claude feature is designed for this kind of substantial, standalone deliverable? The correct answer is A, artifacts, which display substantial content in a separate editable pane distinct from the ongoing chat conversation. Artifacts are designed for exactly this kind of use case, producing a standalone piece of substantial content, like a formatted one-pager, that can be viewed, edited, and exported separately from the back-and-forth chat. Now, why the other options are wrong? B, research mode, which is intended for gathering and synthesizing information rather than producing a polished one-page deliverable, is incorrect. Research mode focuses on information gathering and synthesis. The described need is for a formatted, editable standalone document, which is what artifacts are for. C, memory, which is designed to store persistent facts about the user rather than generate formatted documents, is incorrect. Memory is about retaining relevant context, facts over time, not producing and formatting a standalone document deliverable. D, connectors, which link Claude to external data sources like Google Drive rather than generate new formatted content, is incorrect. Connectors provide access to external data sources. They are not the feature used to generate and edit a standalone formatted document. Question 26. A VP of marketing needs Claude to synthesize a nuanced competitive strategy memo weighing subtle trade-offs across 5 competitors, ambiguous market signals, and internal constraints, where reasoning depth and quality of judgment matter far more than turnaround speed or cost. Which model selection best matches these requirements? The correct answer is B, Opus, since the task involves complex, nuanced reasoning across ambiguous trade-offs where output quality and depth matter more than cost or speed, aligning with the most capable model tier. When a task requires the deepest reasoning and highest quality judgment on complex, ambiguous problems, and cost or speed are secondary concerns, the most capable model tier, Opus, is the appropriate choice, consistent with aligning model selection to task requirements. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Sonnet should always be chosen over Opus for executive deliverables because it is the newest model, is incorrect. Newness is not the deciding factor in model selection, and this option also mischaracterizes the relative capability tiers. Task complexity and quality needs should drive the choice, favoring Opus here. C. Haiku, because faster responses are always preferable for executive deliverables, is incorrect. Speed is not the priority described here. The task explicitly calls for depth of reasoning over ambiguous, nuanced trade-offs, which favors a more capable model even at the cost of speed. D. Any model tier is equally suitable since model choice never affects reasoning quality on complex tasks, is incorrect. Model tiers do differ in reasoning capability, and this is precisely the kind of complex, high-stakes task where that difference matters most. Question 27. A regional sales manager wants Claude to remember her team's recurring quarterly targets, preferred report structure, and a few standing preferences. For example, always list underperforming reps first, without having to restate them every single time she starts a new conversation. Which capability addresses this need? The correct answer is D, memory, which allows Claude to retain relevant context and preferences across separate conversations over time. Memory is designed to carry forward relevant facts and preferences across sessions, so recurring details like standing report preferences don't need to be re-entered in every new conversation. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Switching to Opus, since only the most capable model can retain information between conversations, is incorrect. Retention across conversations is a product feature capability, memory, not a function of which model tier is selected. B. Artifacts, which are designed only for generating standalone documents, not remembering preferences, is incorrect. Artifacts handle standalone content display and editing. They are not the mechanism for persisting preferences across separate conversations. C. Nothing. Claude cannot retain any preferences across separate conversations under any configuration, is incorrect. This is inaccurate. Memory functionality exists specifically to retain relevant context and preferences across sessions. Question 28. A partnerships manager needs a broad, up-to-date scan of recent industry news, funding announcements, and market shifts relevant to potential partners, synthesized from multiple current sources. Which capability is best suited to this need? The correct answer is A, a research-oriented capability designed to gather and synthesize information from multiple current sources, rather than relying solely on the model's static training knowledge. For tasks requiring current, broad information gathered from multiple sources, A research-oriented capability is appropriate since it is designed to actively find and synthesize up-to-date information rather than rely only on built-in training knowledge. Now, why the other options are wrong? B. Uploading last year's annual report as a knowledge source and asking Claude to infer this year's news from it is incorrect. Inferring current events from an outdated document is unreliable and not a substitute for gathering current information via a research capability. C. A plain chat conversation with no additional context, since Claude's built-in knowledge is always fully current, is incorrect. A model's built-in training knowledge has a cutoff and is not guaranteed to reflect the most recent news or announcements, making this unsuitable for a request for current information. D. Switching to haiku, since faster models are better suited to broad research synthesis tasks, is incorrect. Model speed tier does not address the core need here, which is access to current multi-source information. That is a capability feature question, not a model speed question. Question 29. A marketing operations team is evaluating whether to migrate from their legacy CRM to a new platform. They ask Claude to help analyze the situation. Which use of Claude best fits the analyze requirements and use cases objective at this early stage? The correct answer is B. Asking Claude to help structure interview questions for stakeholders, synthesize their pain points with the legacy system, and organize the findings into categorized requirements, must-have, nice-to-have, deal breakers. Using Claude to help gather, structure, and synthesize stakeholder input into organized requirements is a strong fit for the analyze requirements and use cases objective, informing sound decisions before solution design begins. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Asking Claude to write the final migration project plan with exact dates before any requirements have been gathered is incorrect. Producing a detailed final plan before requirements are understood skips the analysis stage and risks a plan built on incomplete or wrong assumptions. C. Skipping analysis and asking Claude to write outreach emails announcing the new CRM to the sales team is incorrect. This is a downstream communication task, not requirements analysis, and is premature before the requirements and solution are even determined. D. Asking Claude to recommend a specific CRM vendor by name without any information about the team's requirements, budget, or current pain points is incorrect. Recommending a specific product with no requirements gathered first is not a sound use of Claude for requirements analysis and risks an ungrounded, unreliable recommendation. Question 30. A small business owner running a boutique candle company wants help planning a month's worth of social content across 3 platforms, organized by theme and posting date. What is an appropriate way to use Claude for this task? The correct answer is C. Ask Claude to generate a structured content calendar with themes, platforms, and suggested posting dates. Then review and adjust it based on business knowledge like upcoming promotions. This reflects sound use of Claude for planning and process support, generating an organized draft calendar that the owner then reviews and refines with business-specific knowledge. Claude wouldn't have on its own. Now, why the other options are wrong? A. Avoid using Claude for planning tasks, since content calendars require creativity that only humans can provide, is incorrect. Claude is well suited to assist with structured planning tasks like content calendars, especially as a starting draft for human refinement. B. Ask Claude to autonomously post content directly to social media accounts without any human review. Is incorrect. Autonomous posting without review removes necessary human oversight and is not an appropriate default use of Claude as a chat-based productivity tool for this kind of planning task. D. Ask Claude to plan content for a full year in exhaustive detail before any campaigns have run to avoid ever revisiting the plan. Is incorrect. Over-planning far in advance in exhaustive detail is not aligned with iterative, responsive content planning and ignores the value of adjusting based on real performance data over time. And that's a wrap on this video. Nice work getting through those 15 questions. If this helped, you're going to want the complete set. All 360 exam-style questions, with full explanations across all 7 CCAO-F domains, are available in my Udemy course, Claude Certified Associate Foundations, CCAO-F 6 Practice Tests. The link is in the description below. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video, where I'll walk you through 15 more questions. See you in the next video.